Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. It's everybody else's fault. It's everybody. It's just like my kids. If something's broken, if something didn't happen, something did happen, it's always the others. It's somebody. It's always somebody else. It's always they did it. Not me. Not me. Not my fault. No. And our president, like a petulant child, no, not his fault. The virus, not his fault. It's those blue states. Yeah, it's them. It's the blue states. Because he said, if we just took all the death and the virus out because of those evil blue states, I can't even make it to how he said it. He says, if you take out the blue states, we're at a level that I don't think anybody in the world would be at. We're really at a very low level, but it's, some of the states, those blue states, the blue state management, them. He's talking about New York, California, New Jersey. He's talking about them. The ones that from the beginning he said, screw them, we're not going to do anything because it's those Democrats. Because we got Woodward's book now. And again, F. Bob Woodward. We've got his book, who we now know Trump knew in January just how deadly this virus was. And it wasn't, he didn't believe it. He knew. He made the choice. And this is what I was asking back then. I was asking the question back then, is it that he truly doesn't understand? Is it truly that he's that dense that he doesn't get that this is dangerous? Or did he make the calculated decision to knowingly push his base out there and go, don't worry about it. You'll maybe make it through. I've said this before. These people know what they're doing. This isn't by chance. This isn't, they're just incompetent. No, this stuff's on purpose. This stuff is plotted out. This stuff is well thought out by really high-priced think tanks and high-priced lobbyists who go, hey, what's in it for us? How can we make as much money as possible? How can we line our pockets? And how can we, have the pendulum of power swing into our favor even more? And, as I've been talking to Trump supporters, one of the things that I've been hammering on with them is, look, the pendulum of power is moving well to the side of capital over that of labor. If you work for a living, this administration, when we look back on it, will be even worse than Ronald Reagan. This will be the worst administration in the history of this country for working people. And oddly enough, and this is just one of those moments where you go, it's a lot of hardworking people who are out there supporting him. They're the ones who seem to believe that he's fighting for us because he's bloviating and he's thumping his chest and waving his arms, when the reality is this guy's been horrible. On every level, horrible. And the virus being a big part of it. Today, you had the guy who's the head of the CDC, this Robert Redfield. He was very honest, and I watched his testimony, and he said, look, the mask is going to give me more protection than probably even a vaccine. We should be wearing the damn mask. Wear the damn mask. Pretty clear. Because he said, look, we're not going to get 100% of the people who are going to get, and he used a big word that I'm not going to try and butcher, but, our bodies might not get the immunity that we need. How about we make sure that we don't get it to begin with? How about we don't come in contact with it and let it die off? He said, look, if for weeks we were wearing the damn mask and we were doing what we were supposed to do, we could probably wipe it out without a vaccine. Well, Trump took exception to this. Well, no, I 100% believe in the importance of vaccines, and blah blah blah. He goes on. So now Redfield, he's got to come out and he's got to prop up the vaccines. He said, I 100% believe in the importance of vaccines and the importance in particular of a COVID-19 vaccine. A COVID-19 vaccine is the thing that will get America back to normal everyday life. He said the best defense we currently have against the virus are the important mitigation efforts of wearing a mask, washing your hands, social distancing, and being careful about crowds. So, look, you don't want to push down the vaccine too much, but you also go, hey, protect yourself. What I said from the very beginning: wear the mask, stay the hell away from people, don't sneeze on anyone, don't let anyone sneeze on you. Simple. Don't go into huge crowds. Don't do the idiotic stuff that we see the right wing doing. Seems kind of simple. But understand, this is a divisive thing. This is the thing to get us into camps. This is a thing to get us pitted against one another. I'm not wearing a mask. And it gets you defiant. I'm fighting for my liberty while they're stealing from you at every single turn. And as I said, I've been talking to my working class Trump supporter friends and saying, look, this administration is horrible for working people. At every turn, the pendulum is swinging further and further to the side of capital and the employment class and the employer class. It just is. From Janus to their push to make it illegal to picket, from their push to make it easier for big business to decertify unions, to handcuffing stewards, to silencing lobbyists, union lobbyists only, not those corporate lobbyists, because those corporate lobbyists, they write big checks, big checks. And the thing is if you look at this, at every turn, the Trump administration has done exactly what corporate America has wanted. The Chamber of Commerce had a wet dream list of all of the labor changes that they've want, and the Trump administration has dutifully gone and checked each one of them off. During the Obama years, they tried to streamline union elections so that they couldn't be drug out for a long time, and employees just browbeaten, senseless about why the unions are bad and how they're no good and all that. And ultimately, just people going, I don't care, I just want to stop. They've done away with that. Now we're going back to the good old days of, hey, the employer basically will decide when that happens. They overturned the joint employer rule that said if you work for a company that is like a subcontractor or a franchise or something like that, and the big company has say over your working conditions, like what uniforms you're going to wear, what tasks you're going to do, all of that stuff, you would think you're an employee, but no. The Trump administration has broken that wide apart. They rammed down our throats forced arbitration. That was on the wet dream list. They've moved further to allowing management to decide the bargaining units. So who knows? We throw in a bunch of people who might be close to management. And the thing that gets me is every time we turn around, you're seeing this massive shift. And I was talking with a steward the other day. And for those who don't know, union stewards are the frontline people who try to solve problems. If there's a problem in the workplace between an employee and management, it's the steward that steps in and says, hey, how can we fix this? How can we deal with discipline issues so it doesn't blow up into more? And how it's always been, and I was a steward for years, how it's always been is, as in that capacity, you're on equal footing with management, because you have to be. If you're advocating for your side, if you're advocating for an employee, if you're fighting to enforce the contract, you've got to be on equal footing. And, sometimes things get heated. I've had, supervisors yell at me and call me names, and, I've, regrettably in some cases have returned the fodder. Because understand, calling someone a name and, using profanity and all that is counterproductive. It's not going to get you anything, but sometimes it happens. But it's always been protected, because the standard was you're basically you're on even grounds. You're no longer in the master-servant relationship. Well, the Trump NLRB has just changed that. And that was on the Chamber of Commerce's wish list, neutering the ability of people to advocate for their union, to fight for their side. Again, the silencing of the working class, the silencing of the people who in this economy still have a little bit of voice on the job. And you go, well, that doesn't sound like a big thing. It is an enormous thing. It's a complete change in the dynamics of everything that collective bargaining and employee representation has been. It's now a mother may I situation. It's no longer I'm going to fight and advocate. It's, oh, please can I? And oh, please can I doesn't get you anywhere. None of the gains that employees have gotten over the years have been given by the benevolent corporation. There's been no, oh, we think you're so wonderful. Here, out of the goodness of our heart, we're going to share. That isn't there. There's no Scrooge moment. There's no there's no moment where, oh, my heart has changed and I'm now going to give my employees health care because, oh, I feel sorry for Tiny Tim. That doesn't happen in real life. What happens is power only accedes to power. And what the Chamber of Commerce and corporate America know is a strong, vibrant labor movement is not in their interest, because that means what? That means they're going to have to share more of the obscene profits that they've put in their pockets. And as we talked about yesterday, from the study that came out from the Rand Corporation, the freaking Rand Corporation, that we've basically been ripped off to about $2.5 trillion. And the working class, again, has been getting screwed year after year after year as wages have not just stagnated, but actually gone backwards. And the benefits that we're paying through the nose for are getting worse and worse and worse. And the pensions are basically non-existent because they're all based on Wall Street. But hey, Trump's going to fight for us. Trump's going to help the working class. All the while, you look at, they've gutted OSHA. At this moment right now, in a moment of a global pandemic, we have not had fewer OSHA inspectors at any point since its inception in 1970 than we have right now. This is the absolute low point. At a moment when our population is bigger than it's ever been, and we have more places that are out there, and we have a global freaking pandemic where people are dying on the job, we have fewer OSHA inspectors. And not just OSHA, MSHA as well. The mines, the same thing. They've weakened mine standards. At every opportunity, they've deregulated because, hey, it's those job-killing regulations, Rick. Got to get rid of those. But never mind the people-killing lack of regulation. And, it's one of these moments where as I'm talking to these Trump cultists who are working people who, I get it, I'm with them. I'm angry over our trade policy. I'm angry over 40 years of stagnant and declining wages. I'm angry over the fact that our health care is getting worse and worse. I'm angry over it too. But Trump ain't the answer. Trump's not the guy who's going to fix this. I know he keeps saying, I alone, I can do it. But it's weird how he talks out of both sides of his mouth on every issue. In fact, he talks all around it. Gonna make sure everyone's covered for pre-existing conditions. Yet, right now as we speak, Trump's Department of Justice, they're seeking to overturn the Affordable Care Act, which does what? Ensures that pre-existing conditions are covered. And, you keep going on and down this path and down this road of, look, this is all of the things, these are the tangible things that his administration has done that is harming you. And the responses I get are, well, he's going to go get the illegals. He loves America. Platitude. All the while they're being robbed. They're less safe. They're less protected. They have less opportunity. And the anger just gets worse. I was talking to some guys about a place. They're union members. And I was saying, imagine there being no union here. And the guy's like, I can't even imagine that. This place is so bad. These people are so bad to us that without a union, it would be unbearable. The union fights for us. It would be unbearable to work here. And I'm saying, but you're voting for Trump, who is in the process of really making it near impossible for unions to exist. The Janus case was only the first of many attacks to come. There's another Janus coming. There's another attack on labor rights coming. And as I was reading through this article on the most recent bit of basically neutering unions' ability to lobby their legislature, there was a line in the story that caught my attention. It was one of the people from the National Right to Work Legal Defense Fund, who all their job is to find one person who's disgruntled, one person who has a problem with the union, and they paper the unions with lawsuits and frivolous lawsuits. And the idea is that you spend dues dollars on fighting these lawsuits, and they never run out of time or energy because corporate America is just funneling cash to them all the time. But the guy said virtually every private sector worker has at least one dissenting member. And that's who we're going to go after. Because we're going to stop the union's ability to lobby and fight for better laws. Like minimum wage, like for nurses, and this is the case of nurses, safe staffing levels, higher funding for hospitals so that emergency rooms stay open. And the weird thing and the scary thing, it's probably going to happen. They're probably going to cut off the union's ability to fund any lobbying activity, silencing their ability to fight for their members, all because one guy. And this takes me back to the idea from the old days of why you had to have a closed shop, why it was a member-driven organization, and you threw the bums out who were the troublemakers, were that one who simply wanted to cause chaos and trouble, and I would argue in a lot of cases are planted and are compensated. People like Mark Janus, who now works for some fancy think tank with a nice paycheck. He got his payday. And all of the public sector workers in this country, screwed. The pendulum is swinging, and when it swings too far, like I argue it is now, it's a lot of work to get it back. And I tell people the reason I'm voting for Joe Biden is, one, all of this stuff is going to stop, but two, he's going to be the guy that maybe bring it back to somewhere near the midpoint, or at least somewhere near the same point. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day oil workers walked off the job. The strike soon spread to 20 states and involved more than 43,000 workers at 22 oil companies. After years of wartime wage freezes, the union's demand was 52 for 40, 52 hours pay for 40 hours work. Workers demanded a 30% pay increase, shift differentials, and an eventual return to the 36-hour work week. The strike began in Michigan at the Saccone Vacuum Refinery in Trenton. From there, it spread to Gulf, Sinclair, and Shell. By October 4th, President Truman signed Executive Order 9639, allowing the Secretary of the Navy to seize petroleum operations. The Oil Workers International Union CIO immediately called off the strike and ordered its members back to work. A month later, the Navy had still not relinquished control of operations. The Union considered Truman's seizure a betrayal. There was no mechanism put in place to settle the dispute or consider workers' demands. By January 1946, the oil panel created by the Secretary of Labor finally awarded oil workers an 18% wage increase. Though disappointed, the Union considered it a victory. They asserted the strike action was significant on a number of levels. The first nationwide industry strike had just forced the oil companies to meet with the union for the very first time. The OWI believed the groundwork for industry-wide bargaining had been finally established. It had been the first post-war strike and had forced the government to begin moving away from wartime wage controls. Of the post-war strikes, it won the largest pay increase. And importantly, it broke the power of Standard Oil to dictate wages to the industry through its dealings with its independent union.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So the Trump campaign, they're suing the good folks in New Jersey. They don't want them counting those votes too early. Evidently, New Jersey was going to start counting ballots 10 days, or is counting ballots 10 days before the November 3rd election date. Because, hey, you're going to have a lot of mail-in ballots coming in. You want to get ahead of the game so you don't get overwhelmed. I get it. Trump campaign saying, nope, we don't want that at all. Also, they're asking U.S. District Court Judge Michael Shipp to bar election officials from taking any mail-in ballots that aren't postmarked after 2 days. So, going to be interesting to see how they, like I said, been saying for a while, they're setting up the lawsuits. They're setting up all of the things that challenge every possible vote, which is why we got to get out in huge numbers and people cast their ballots, which is why I'm so thrilled to talk about this next topic. My next two guests have set up the National Vote at Home Initiative. I've got Alex Mohajer and Jonathan Welsh, co-executive producers of the National Vote at Home Initiative. Alex, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having us. So excited to be here. Finally, first time on the show.
I appreciate Jonathan. I appreciate you being on as well. But Alex, let's start with why'd you guys start this? What's the point in all of this? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, so the National Vote at Home Initiative, it's a multimedia Get Out the Vote project by the Stonewall Democratic Club. And we're based out of LA, but we were thinking, how do we want to try and affect the outcome of this election? And we were looking at the Trump campaign immediately starting to assault vote by mail systems. And really the GOP strategy is to just is to attack voting in general. It's a full-on assault on voting in every which way. And we thought, you know what we're going to do? We are going to target 16 key battleground states and swing states, or states with potential Senate pickups for Democrats, and get them the information they need to vote by mail safely, easily, and early, right, because of the slowdowns in the Postal Service. So we recruited a really talented roster of really cool celebrities like Deborah Messing and Linda Carter and Daniel Newman from The Walking Dead. And we had them each do a video for us for 16 of these states. And we've been releasing these videos trying to turn out votes in those states.
No, you guys have been doing an excellent job. And Jonathan, you look at some of the information that you guys are putting out, which I think is so important so that people know how this works, because it's really getting complicated. I mean, you would think you get your at-home ballot, you put your names maybe on it, or there's the names of the candidates. You check off who you want, you send it back. Some of these things really, really complicated.
Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing, too, Rick, is that you see that the Trump campaign and Trump himself, they're trying to create chaos around mail-in voting. So it doesn't have to be that difficult. But all they're doing is throwing everything at the wall to see how it's going to stick. And, and it's creating chaos and conflict for so many people who do want to vote safely. And it really does come down to what state you're in. Like Alex and I researched all the 16 states that we selected for the project. And we saw that there are different parameters, different restrictions, and just everything's different in each state. So we did our best to kind of tailor the project state by state, but to also give people very general information on like when they have to send their ballot back. Like you get your ballot in hand, you should have that thing back at the registrar of voters or your county clerk or whoever it is in your state by October 20th. So we tried to make sure that it was as streamlined as humanly possible and as easy for people to grasp as they could.
Yeah, I've been saying it. The second you get it, don't even put it on the table. Just open it up, fill it out, and take it wherever. That minute, don't let it sit on the table. Don't let it sit for another day. Get it back as quick as possible if you're going to do the mail-in ballot. Now, for both of you, recently had Greg Palast on the program, and he was saying, look, almost a quarter of mail-in ballots don't get counted because they're thrown out for one reason or another. The signature's not here, a stamp's not here, they used a check instead of a circle. What are you advocating for people to do, especially in this moment of pandemic, knowing that maybe upwards of a quarter of our votes might not get counted?
Well, Rick, first of all, that's really funny because I do another program and I had Greg Palast on this morning, but that's neither here nor there. What we're recommending is if you're going to have a plan A and have a plan B. If you're voting by mail in this election and you're one of the vulnerable populations and you must necessarily vote by mail, make sure you request. First, you have to be registered to vote, okay? To receive an absentee ballot, you got to be registered. Make sure your proper address is on file. Then you got to request your absentee ballot now, today, because we're expecting a 14-day round trip for these ballots from the time that you request it to the time you get it in. So request it now. Don't give the Trump administration and the slowdowns on the USPS any excuse to tamper with our votes. Request it now, submit your ballot today, make sure it's signed, make sure it's sealed. And if you can't get your ballot into the mailbox by October 20th, for whatever reason, you in most of these states can take your ballot right to your local polling location or precinct or county registrar, and you can just drop the ballot off in a lot of these states. Or if you can't do that, you can early vote. There are lots of options available to people. Everyone's vote should and can and will count. Just make your plan now and be prepared to crawl over hellfire and brimstone to vote in this election.
No, that's what it's going to take. I mean, I got to think that's what it's going to take, right, Jonathan? This kind of persistence that I think we've never had to think about in the past in this country.
No, we never have. And, I think that you really, like Alex was saying, you come up with a plan A and a plan B, but you also can follow up with your ballot. So in most states, you're able to actually track your ballot online and see if it's been counted. And in most scenarios, like if there's an issue with your ballot, you have the opportunity after your vote's been cast to cure your ballot if it gets rejected for any reason. And oftentimes those are things that are as simple as the signature that you have on file with the registrar of voters in your state needs to match what goes on your ballot or your ballot envelope. So, it's little things like that. And it's really following up and making sure that your ballot ends up getting counted that you have the power to do.
Yeah, I guess I'm screwed because my signature never looks the same twice.
Oh, well, you might be a great candidate to early vote, Rick.
That's right.
No, I'll be honest. I'm gonna slap on my mask. I'm gonna get my hazmat suit on, and I'm going to the polls to vote. But you're right. I mean, people who are the vulnerable class. If you're a senior, if you've got pre-existing lung conditions, most certainly you protect yourself. And the mail-in ballot is most certainly the way to go and that's for each individual to make up their mind over, I believe.
Yeah. And look, Greg Palast, we were talking this morning and Greg was telling me that even here in California, his name was removed from the voter rolls in California inexplicably. We know voter purges are a thing. So it's got to be right now that you check to see if you're still registered. We know that in 2016, exit poll data showed that Hillary Clinton won, and the computerized counts showed that she lost in states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Wisconsin. And that's because people were showing up to the polls. They were casting their ballots, but they had been purged from the rolls and were casting provisional ballots, and those ballots were not being counted. So check to see if you're registered. It is a huge, huge problem in the United States, and even here in California where you think you might be safe. So check your voter registration today. And you can do that at stonewall.vote, our website, or iwillvote.com.
There you go. We'll make sure we get links out on social media how folks can take a look at that stuff, because ultimately it is about getting as many people as possible to the polling places. But so let me ask you, I know that you guys aren't pushing any candidates, but doesn't it seem to you like one side seems to have a little bit more energy than the other, and maybe or how do you prop up the other side to get out and be a little more active?
Yeah, well, we're also living in a world of fear right now, Rick. I think, the past 3.5 years have really been challenging to anyone with a democratic sensibilities psyche. I mean, we're being pounded every day with something that's going on in the news. And now, of course, the very right to vote is something that Trump is threatening. So, what I think you're seeing is that we may be enthusiastic, but we're also kind of balancing that emotion with being really afraid about what could possibly happen. What I can say is that, personally, I'm super excited about getting out there and voting. I'm voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and I think that's no surprise. I'm part of the Stonewall Democratic Club, but I'm very, very excited about these two, and I think that it's incumbent on us who feel that way to try to spread that to everybody else who's out there voting, that we're actually voting for something. We're voting for someone, and we're voting for a platform. We're not just voting against Donald Trump.
There you go. See, for me, the answer, if I were answering that question, I said, screw you, I'm excited. I'm ready to go out and vote. And I know 1,000 people who are just as excited. At least that's how I would have answered it.
Okay, well, I'm going to get even more excited the more we talk about it. So.
I'm getting even more excited just hearing how excited you guys are. So
no, because,
that's right.
Because the reason I bring it up and the reason I framed it that way is because we're hearing a lot of this. It's a low energy. We're hearing Sleepy Joe. We're hearing a lot of this stuff. And the mainstream media is pushing this frame that people like me, who Biden wasn't my first choice, wasn't even close. But I'll tell you, I'm excited as hell to get Donald Trump out of the White House. I'm excited as hell to stop the attacks on labor and workers and the LGBT community and every sane person in this country.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to curse on this program,
No.
Rick? Okay, great.
No, we can't.
So I won't do that. But this is the same lame myth that they were like propagating in 2016 about Hillary Clinton. It's the enthusiasm gap. Like, people were fired up for her. They gave her a popular vote victory and more votes than any other presidential candidate in history, second only to Obama. It was a technical snafu, a failing of our constitutional processes that allowed for Trump to squeak by. And honestly, people are excited to vote in this election. I'm ready to go. I am ready for this blasphemy to be over. And I'm also ready to have a president who cares about us and who's willing to start pushing our agenda forward with climate change and gun reform and LGBTQ rights and equal rights for women and equal pay for equal work. If you care about these things, climate change, the entire West Coast is on fire. I'm born and raised here, I'm ready for quick, aggressive action. And I think if you look at Joe Biden's platform, this is going to be the most progressive president since FDR. And I'm on board and I'm ready to go. I'm riding with Biden.
I'm hoping you're right. Look, I see Biden a little differently. I see him as, someone who's not looking for major change, but maybe he will rise to the moment, because truth of the matter is FDR didn't run on major change either. He just rose to the time and the moment and did what we needed him to do. So I'm hoping Biden will be the same guy.
I think Biden actually knows how to meet the moment. So, he has kind of moved through his career in such a way that I think he's convinced me, at least, that he absolutely knows how to meet the moment and how to kind of bend and change. He also is a collaborative guy. So when you get Joe Biden, you get the whole Democratic team. So he may not have been your first choice. I mean, he was like my 15th choice in the primary, but I'm still super excited because I know what he stands for. And I know that he's going to bring everybody on board with him. So I'm excited, and not for nothing, Rick, but the guy can run up and down a ramp. So, I think he has
hold a
energy.
water bottle. Yeah.
So are you in favor of the 4-hour debate that Rogan threw out there, kind of like the Lincoln Douglas debates? Because I'm telling you, if I'm Joe Biden, I take him up on it.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, Donald Trump doesn't have the stamina, honestly, and really those debates are going to be a real spectacle, because we know that Donald Trump is just going to throw lies and chaos and spectacle at the wall. He did it in 2016. And I'll note, Joe Biden should probably take some tips from Hillary from the 2016 debates, because she handled him very deftly. And I kind of wonder whether the debates will really have an impact. I think if you don't know who you're voting for at this point, then I don't know what to tell you, but I think that the choice is very clear.
Are we still sticking with the when he goes low, we go high nonsense? Because I said at the beginning, when he goes high, you stomp his face in the ground. You learn that playing football. They go after your knees, you rub their face in the dirt. At least that's my mentality. I'm curious your thoughts.
I think that working class Joe's probably gonna give him. Oh my God, of course. I think he's going to give him a run for his money. I mean, Joe Biden it wasn't great in the debates in the primary, but if you go back and you look at Joe Biden debating Sarah Palin, Paul Ryan, and Bernie Sanders one-on-one, he's really good and he's really sharp. So I think that this is the moment that he's been waiting for, and it's happening in less than 2 weeks. I definitely think that he's going to go for the throat. I mean, the guy also his family's been attacked by Donald Trump and the Republicans mercilessly over the past couple of years for absolutely no reason with manufactured crises. So I think the gloves are going to come off.
Yeah, I see. I'd be rolling up the sleeves and grabbing him by the throat, but that's why I'm not running for president. So real quick, back to the National Vote at Home initiative, stonewall.vote, the website, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
And again, walk me through real quick what we're asking folks to do.
If you are looking to learn how to vote by mail in your state, check out our website, stonewall.vote. We've got videos, we've got step-by-step instructions, we've got all the links, we've got all the deadlines in a very nice, easy to understand, concise, easy to digest bit of information on our site. And you can register right there. The links are right there. If you're not registered to vote, you can visit stonewall.vote. And if your state is not listed in one of the 16 states that we are handling, just click the button that says other states, and it will take you to a place where you can go ahead and register or request your absentee ballot. And you can do most of this in most states online. So stonewall.vote, and then share these videos featuring Deborah Messing and Linda Carter and Piper Perabo and Nina West and so many wonderful people who participated. If you know people in that state, share the video with the people and friends and family in that state and make sure that they know, and make sure that you're putting the pressure on them, not in a negative way, in a positive way. Hey, I'm excited to vote. Are you too? And here's the information you need in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan, or even states like Ohio, Arizona, North Carolina, Florida. I know you've had Fred Gutenberg on, right, Rick? Have you had Fred on?
We've worked on it a couple of times, but I know him. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. So he did a Florida video for us, and just really excited. And so, yeah, share this information and visit stonewall.vote.
Get those out there, because you guys have done really great work. I mean, you look at the breadth of the people who have come forward and to do this. It kind of shows just how important this election cycle is. And I know we say it every election cycle, or at least every election cycle of my life. This is the most important ever. This kind of
yeah,
is.
we mean it. Yeah,
This is kind of
it.
And last word goes to you, Jonathan. Thoughts on why we should be voting and why maybe vote at home?
Well, like you said, this is the most important election. We mean it this time. I mean, it's our country. Our democracy is on the line, and this is the last stop before we can, say that we tried everything and it's done. So do it at home, do it safely, do it in a way that you know your vote's going to be counted, and just don't risk your health.
There you go. Good stuff, guys. I appreciate the time. Alex, Jonathan, good stuff. Co-executive producers of the National Vote at Home Initiative, stonewall.vote, the website. Check it out. Guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2004. That was not a good day for hockey fans. The National Hockey League owners locked out the players. The owners and the players' union could not come to an agreement on issues including pay, free agency rules, and drug testing. League owners also wanted to implement a salary cap. The Players Association objected. The first game of the season was supposed to take place on October 13th. But across the country, the arenas stood silent. As the impasse dragged on, in February, the league announced the season was canceled. The Associated Press reported, quote, "A hockey season on the brink is now a season gone bust." The NHL canceled what was left of its decimated schedule Wednesday after a round of last gasp negotiations failed to resolve differences over a salary cap, the flashpoint issue that led to a lockout. The article continued, quote, "No Stanley Cup champion will be crowned. The first time that's happened since 1919, when the 2-year-old league called off the finals because of a flu epidemic. It was the first time that a North American professional sports league lost a full season to a labor dispute. Some of the players found work in the European leagues at greatly reduced pay. It's estimated that the league lost $2 billion in the lockout and that players lost $1 billion in salaries. The impact of the lockout rippled throughout restaurants and other businesses that relied on the hockey crowds, causing layoffs for waitstaff. Finally, in July, an agreement was reached. The players gave in to the owner's demand for a salary cap. In 2012, another lockout by management cost NHL players another half of the season. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently, Michael Caputo. Remember we talked about Mike yesterday, the guy with all the Facebook Live event with all the conspiracy theories on how the scientists were all, it was sedition, he said. And also that the left wing was arming themselves and they were practicing for an insurrection. And obviously the Trump supporter who was shot and killed was just a drill. Well, Michael Caputo is taking 2 months off. He needs to focus on his health and his family well-being. It's not the fact that everybody was going, "You're nuts. We need to get you out of here." And the campaign's probably going, "No, we don't need this." But he needs to focus on his health. And good for him, maybe a little time aside will be good to maybe clear the mind, maybe get some treatment, something along those lines. And we're here to share some thoughts on, Mr. Caputo and the rest of the conspiracy craziness. I've asked our good friend Sarah Kendzior to come talk with us. Sarah is the co-host of the fantastic podcast Gaslit Nation, also the author of the best-selling The View from Flyover Country and the most recent New York Times bestseller, Hiding in Plain Sight. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So what do you make of Caputo taking a couple of months off to work on health and family?
I mean, I think it's bullshit. Oh, I'm sorry. You can edit that. I think it's nonsense because, when people talk about Caputo, they tend to leave out the most salient facts of his biography, which is that in the 1990s, Caputo worked for the Kremlin. He was Putin's image consultant, and then he went on to work for a bunch of Russian oligarchs, the same oligarchs connected to Trump. Then he went into a partnership with his old friend, Roger Stone. He's really like a little Roger Stone lapdog. Then he was Trump's campaign manager. So he is yet another one of this circle of, corrupt Kremlin-associated freaks that follows Trump wherever he goes throughout his life. And this whole thing now where he's, is claiming to have some sort of mental breakdown. I mean, I honestly don't quite believe it. I mean, he's very volatile. He's threatened me on Twitter. He's threatened other journalists on Twitter. So, he's a nasty guy. I think he wanted an excuse to spread these conspiracy theories, and now he's kind of taking an out. And the notable part about his announcement, they said he's just taking 60 days off. So basically saying, he's coming back after the election. He's going to come back at the most vulnerable time in American history, where we're probably going to have violence, court battles. We're not going to know who the president is. We're probably going to have, a spread of coronavirus, going up, where we need clear communication on that. That's supposed to be his job. Of course, it's not his job. In reality, his job is to spread conspiracies and lies for Trump. So, they have no qualms on taking him back. Those should be fireable offenses. Like when you say the CDC is full of evil scientists that have committed sedition, when you're calling for armed insurrection, you should not ever be invited back into the government. But they just give him a little, 2-month break, and then he gets to be reinstalled again. And that's how the Trump crime cult works.
Yeah, well, and I thought it was, he went to the tried and true health and family. I would have thought, I'm crazy and I need a mental health break is probably better. But you're right. I'm afraid that he comes back right at the worst time, because even if Trump does lose, and even if, as some of my friends seem to believe, that on election night it's going to be a giant landslide and Biden's going to win, and there's going to be no question about it, there's still that moment from election day to January 20th of 2021 that Trump and the crime family are still in charge.
Yeah, and if Biden wins, they're going to be contesting that win the entire time, and they'll contest it through law. They'll also contest it on the street. Trump will, as he has been doing, call for violence from his supporters. Those supporters have been preparing with weapons. We've already seen previews of what's to come, in Portland and in Kenosha and in other places, with outbreaks of violence and the police basically being utilized as a weapon on behalf of Trump. That's the kind of thing that you see in former Soviet authoritarian states all the time, this kind of hybrid police military force that responds to a centralized authority instead of a local authority. So all of that is very concerning. And, even if Biden gets in and stays in, we're still going to be dealing with all of these problems. Like, it is amazing to me how obvious these crises were. That's why I announced that they were there in early 2016, and that they've had, people have had 4 years to prepare, to prevent this, to slow this down, and they just stayed in la la land, just in denial, saying all this was impossible, so-and-so would save the day, institutions would hold, and now suddenly they're all like, oh yeah, it's fascism, and it's going to be civil war. I'm like, yes, you fools, it's because of your inaction that we're going to have that. So way to go, way to dig all of our graves in harmony. So yeah.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. We've done nothing over these last 4 years to prevent the Russians from doing more, or now the Chinese and the North Koreans and whomever else. And we've done nothing to really secure our ballot boxes. A lot of people are concerned that we're still vulnerable there. And now with the pandemic, we've had Greg Palast on the program a couple of times who says, look, in the mail-in ballots, about a quarter of those get chucked out. So, I mean, do we believe what comes out of the ballot box on either side of the equation?
I don't know. I mean, that's why, for years now, I've been pushing for just transparency. I've been saying what you need to do is just make this as transparent and as objective as possible. And the best way to do that was hand-marked paper ballots, which is, what I was suggesting years ago. The Democrats and others were not interested in that suggestion. One of the other perils we face is the fact that, electronic machines can be hacked, and they finally have admitted that this is possible, that they are connected to modems, and that votes were likely changed in 2016, literally changed from Clinton to Trump. So this is quite possibly an illegitimate win. That's a thing that they don't even want to address because, of course, you have an illegitimate president, all those appointments, court appointments, policies, and so forth. Are they illegitimate too? Those are questions that would come up. That's why they needed to audit that vote back in 2016. But yeah, every part of this election is very vulnerable. And in March, when the pandemic arose, I was like, well, they need to immediately figure out a plan, a centralized plan, establish rules, reach out to voters, have daily press conferences on how to vote and how to deal with coronavirus. No, you saw people that tried to do things like that, like Katie Porter, who did a very good job in the beginning, basically get shut down by Pelosi. And so we've had vacation from the Democrats in silence, and none of that has been helpful. And, the voting rules are very confusing in some states, including mine. There are 2 different types of paper ballots. If you mail the wrong one to the wrong place, it doesn't count. They're doing everything possible to make it confusing and difficult. And if it's hard for me as a person who studies this stuff all the time, is constantly thinking about it, I don't even know what an ordinary person who just wants to get up that day and cast their vote, what the hell they're going to be dealing with and what kind of unfamiliar territory, whether they're just going to shrug and go home. I could easily see that happening.
No, and look, I've been doing some get out the vote work. And I'm getting that message from some people. I'm not bothering. I don't know. I don't want to know. I want to bury my head in the sand. And this is where Trump has been really effective by causing the kind of pain. And look, they learned this in 2011 in Wisconsin. With the recall vote and all of the hammering of the voters. Walker won not being recalled because simply the people just wanted the pain to stop. And I think as a country, we're in that moment where people are like, I don't care. I want the pain to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Just we get pain and chaos with either outcome. Only with Trump, it's like basically descending on a fast track to hell. And with Biden, it's like kind of going off a cliff into no man's land. We don't know where we're going to end up. But with Trump, the route is very sure. Like the route is our demise. And so, people really have to not choose that route and choose the Biden route, which is not going to be easy. It's not going to magically solve all of these problems, but at least it's a step in the right direction. It's a step away from both autocracy and encouragement of civil war, civil violence. And I think, their goal, as I've said many times, is to strip this country down and sell it off for parts. And that's why they want us weak. They want us sick. They want us impoverished. That is going to continue under Trump. That is an objective. That's basically his platform. Whereas with Biden, we may end up all three of those things anyway, but I think they'll at least try to prevent it. And I certainly think things like the coronavirus or climate policy is going to be radically different under Biden and Harris. And like those two issues alone are enough to, should motivate people to get out and vote because those are existential problems.
Right. So it's not going to get cooler. It's not going to just get cooler as Trump says. That's just going to happen.
The minute he said that, the first thing I thought was nuclear winter.
Well, okay.
Because he's so obsessed with nuclear weapons. And he said immediately after, because they said, well, the scientists aren't saying that it's going to become cooler suddenly. And he's like, the scientists don't even know about it. And I'm like, oh, God. Because, he has talked about wanting to use nuclear weapons many times. And even recently, Woodward revealed we nearly did go to nuclear war with North Korea in 2017, which is what I was saying at the time when people were calling me a lunatic for suggesting that was possible. That was indeed the plan. And so, yeah, I could see Trump, who once wanted to nuke a hurricane, wanting to drop a nuke to, say, stop the fires. I mean, it doesn't have to make like logical, normal person sense. It just has to make like Trump sense, which means it makes like, no scientific sense at all and is a terrible idea and is just fulfilling a sadistic desire that he's had for like 40 years.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and the reason I brought up the people who said, I just want the pain to stop is, while decent people, the folks who aren't paying attention to every minute and aren't, political junkies like I am, they want to go about their lives and they're turning away. But I look at the other side. I look at the extreme right, these conspiracy nuts like these Q kooks. They're organizing like crazy. And my fear is they then take over and we move even further to the extreme because of just how out there these folks really are.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a way to handle QAnon and to counter, the conspiracy theories that aren't true, the propaganda, the threats, is to tell the full truth about the topics that they're bringing up. So, for example, if they say that our government is run by a cabal of sadistic elite pedophiles, that's true.
Yes.
Sorry to say it, but it is. That's true with Jeffrey Epstein. It was true with Craig Spence. True with Ghislaine Maxwell. It was true with Hastert. I mean, there are a lot of examples. They're international. We have this problem. Epstein was blackmailing major figures from all over the world. It goes into corporations and other influential bodies as well, into media. So when people come out and then they say, everything QAnon says is total nonsense, the entire premise is ridiculous, that just makes them stronger because they have, objective proof that at least that part of what they're saying is right. As for, the cannibalism claim, the JFK Jr. is alive claim, no, there's nothing to back that up.
Right.
But the best way to handle this is to tell the truth, is to, express what you would think this would not be hard for people, basic human sympathy toward the plight of trafficked and abused children, which is something we should be concerned about. But what's happened is QAnon hijacked genuine concern about that, especially concern, I think, among parents, and they're using it to build a political cult. And people are feeling very vulnerable right now. They're very scared because of coronavirus and because of all the political chaos. And so they're like ripe for the picking. And, they're doing outreach. The Democratic Party really isn't. Some people within it are. But I think after the blue wave, which really was a great effort of Democratic organization, and, brought the House in, expecting some accountability, expecting them to at least try to battle Trump, and they did nothing. That's what's killed the organization this time around. And, I knew that would happen. I knew they'd have trouble finding volunteers and canvassers, and I knew that people, who those people, nowadays I hear from friends who are making calls on behalf of Democratic candidates, and they're hearing from them, well, I did vote Democratic in 2018 because I thought you were going to stop Trump. I'm not voting at all now because Nancy Pelosi didn't do anything. Like, they wouldn't even impeach him. They're bringing those things up. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, it's basically looks to me like a controlled opposition. And that's really unfair for all the Democratic members of Congress who did try or who wanted to try, because they're there. They're trying to do their jobs, but they're stopped by this, horrific leadership. And so it's just such a shame because we really do need, again, the Democrats to win the House, the Senate, and the presidency in order to turn any of this around. And they have just, really not taken the threat seriously, I guess, or maybe they're cool with it. I really don't know how to make sense of their behavior.
Yeah, I don't either. But, I saw this. I don't know if you saw the Common Cause came out with their this new report that named the Republican-controlled Senate I guess the 116th Congress is the least productive in history, is what they've said. And I'll tell you, I think they've been very productive because, in what you just said is what the Senate was able to do, because that House passed hundreds of bills, something like 500 pieces of legislation that just piled up on McConnell's desk. And I think they were extremely productive in doing exactly what you said. Hey, I thought change was coming, and he stopped it.
I mean, they stopped it, but there are all these other mechanisms they could have used. The power of the purse, inherent contempt, or honestly just rhetoric, just coming right out and saying, like lots of them are saying now, yes, Trump wants Americans to die of coronavirus. Like, this was blindingly obvious in March, and it needed to be said then so that citizens could prepare themselves for what kind of policies this administration was going to, to pass and how they're going to treat this crisis. They needed to know that. And we're getting these delayed, oh, gee, I guess he did want to kill us after all reactions. And it's like, you need to be blunt. This is fascism. This is authoritarianism. You need to be very proactive about it. And, the same was true always of having things like hearings. Like, when they don't have hearings on crimes against humanity, like the concentration camps at the border, or on incredible corruption, like on obstruction of justice, on, Trump pardoning someone like Roger Stone, his criminal collaborator, when they don't seem to be taking that seriously, then the public doesn't take it seriously. They don't realize necessarily what a threat it is because they're relying on media coverage of it. And if media is blowing it off and Congress is also blowing it off, then they think, oh, well, I guess I'm silly to be, worried about this thing, but they're not. It's very serious. And so just talking about it more would make such a tremendous difference. And we see the same thing with something like climate change, the fact that people did not treat that as a major issue. It wasn't a subject in debate, and this is not new. This is not a product of the Trump era. This has just been like the last 30 years. And now look what happened. The whole West Coast is burning down. Like, that's what happens when you don't talk about a serious crisis early.
Yeah, and this is where we are. Sarah, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. As always, great stuff. Thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
As always, our good friend Sarah Kendzior. Check out her work over at Gaslit Nation. Highly suggested. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Morgan Company on Wall Street in New York City. 500 pounds of cast iron slugs were packed in with the dynamite. A timer detonated at 12:01 p.m. The explosion destroyed the horse and wagon. Shrapnel from the explosion ripped through the air, killing 38 people and injuring hundreds more. The unknown driver of the wagon was believed to have escaped. Authorities blamed anarchists. Meanwhile, the company's workers who died in the attack were mostly young messengers, stenographers, clerks, and brokers. Most of the wounded suffered severe injuries. Just minutes after the blast, the president of the New York Stock Exchange suspended trading in order to prevent a panic. Since the target had been the J.P. Morgan Company, the New York State District Attorney suggested the bomb was planted by radical anti-capitalists. The Bureau of Investigation, the forerunner to the FBI, pursued the bombing for 3 years. They never found the culprit. In 1944, the FBI reopened the investigation and decided the bomb was the work of Italian anarchists. There was speculation that the bomb was planted by an Italian in retaliation for the executions of Sacco and Vanzetti. 3 days after the bombing, the New York Times reported, "It was said today at the Department of Justice that Attorney General Palmer would recommend in his annual report to Congress that drastic laws for dealing with anarchists and other disturbing elements be enacted. At the same time, he will ask for larger appropriations, which were denied in the past." Over the next 2 years, the Palmer raids arrested and deported many accused leftists. Not surprising, most of the accused and deported were the loudest voices for workers' rights and a united working class. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Let's talk pills. To treat everything from allergies to heart problems, half of Americans take a prescription medicine every day, and nearly all of us reach for the pill bottle on occasion. It's perfectly safe, though, because the Food and Drug Administration regulates the ingredients that go into those medicinal compounds, right? Yes, assuming they're produced in the USA. Aren't they? Mostly, no. Take antibiotics. The New York Times reports that ingredients for the majority of these bacteria fighters are now made almost exclusively in China and India, as are the components of dozens of other major drugs. Unbeknownst to most Americans and to our doctors, China has become the world's preeminent supplier of medicines. As one major drug company puts it, if tomorrow China stopped supplying pharmaceutical ingredients, the worldwide pharmaceutical industry would collapse. What's at work here is mindless globalization and deregulation. Our politicians threw open the U.S. market to drug imports while also letting foreign manufacturers go uninspected and unregulated. So, companies located in China can cut corners and undercut our own regulated pill makers. America's last producer of penicillin's ingredients, for example, shut down in 2004, leaving us dependent on China. FDA, our supposed watchdog, doesn't even know where a drug's ingredients come from. Why? Because drug companies say they don't like to reveal their sources, so they don't. The Times found that one federal database lists the existence of about 3,000 foreign drug plants that ship to the U.S., while another lists 6,800. No one knows which is correct, if either. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is ridiculous. For the sake of America's health, security, and economy, let's regulate all pill makers and rebuild our own industry.
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So schools are opening, and kids are going back to school, and we've seen some interesting some numbers jumping in certain places. In fact, if you listen to the CDC guy today, they're worried about the younger generation, where the numbers are creeping up. In fact, he said, it's like almost a skyrocketing of infections for young people, and I got to question some of the numbers coming out of our government. It's scary stuff. But here to share some thoughts on what it's like to have to go back into this and the comparing of teachers to other crafts. I've asked Nancy Bailey to come talk with us. She's an education blogger. She's written a piece on Stop COVID-19 Career Comparison Guilting. Wow, that's a mouthful. Nancy, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So, career comparison guilting. Explain that to me.
Well, I think since the start of this, we've seen other people in other professions even. I guess I noticed it first with pediatricians who would often say, well, it'll probably be okay for teachers to go back. And even last spring, they were talking about this, and, they were finding reasons why it would be okay. And, I started thinking about how different and unique the school environment is. And I don't know if people really realize that. I wrote a post back in June about the reasons why schools shouldn't open and in the fall, and I listed a lot of different reasons. And just this morning, I received an email from a grandmother who said, I take my child to Walmart shopping, so I should be able to send her to school. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Not only is it maybe not safe to go to Walmart.
Yeah, that was my first thought. Why would you take the kid to Walmart?
Right. And so, but, things have opened, and so people are able to, go back to the doctor. They're able to fly on airplanes, and they go to grocery stores. And so they think, well, if these places are open, then schools should open. And with pediatricians, when you have a child who's ill and you take them to the doctor, there's all kinds of protocols that you can follow. I mean, they might just have one child come in at a time. I mean, I went to the dentist a few weeks ago, and it was just amazing. I didn't see any other people except the hygienist and the dentist, and they both had special outfits on.
Yep.
And, I waved to the receptionist behind the plexiglass. I waited outside until they were ready for me. I mean, when you compare that, and that I would think would be what a pediatrician would do as well, have a child in one at a time. And so they could follow particular safety and extra precautions in caring for children. So, but schools do not have that luxury. You have many different, the schools aren't even standardized. Some schools, from what I've seen on the news, there are some schools that do safety very well. They look like they've got everything very orderly. And then you see other schools where the kids are packed in the hallways like sardines. So schools are a very unique environment, and it's not easy. All of these careers and all of these, stores and everything, they all have their certain safety protocols and plans that they have to follow. But schools are a unique environment.
Yeah, I said from the very beginning on the whole topic of reopening, I go, if anyone's ever had a kid in a classroom where head lice got in, and everybody gets it.
Right.
And that's just a minor nuisance. This is an airborne pathogen. I mean, the difference is, the kids are, wearing each other's hats, bumping into each other's heads, and transferring lice that way. This is, you're just breathing. If you're in the same space, this is much more deadly and contagious. But falling on deaf ears.
It is, I'm afraid, and I think too, because I've been watching on Twitter the New York City teachers are very concerned about returning, even though they've gotten the number of COVID cases down now. They had it really tough back in the spring, and I mean, some of those teachers lost some of their friends. And Annie Tan is a teacher who especially has been especially outspoken about some of the problems with the schools there yet. And I mean, they have infrastructure issues. They have schools with windows that don't open well, and they have still questions about ventilation there. And their bathrooms are not supposed to be very good yet. I don't think that's the last time I read their about their survey. I think that came out, and so they've got a lot of difficulties, and yet. Maybe they've even started back. I'm not sure. They might have started back already. But, a lot of those teachers are pretty stressed and pretty scared. And my heart goes out to them. I think it would be very difficult to to be working with children who, they're children, like you were saying. They take their masks off, or they might have parents who don't even think masks are important. You've got that problem going on. And then social distancing is very difficult. It's just a totally unique environment. How do you help kids to eat? I mean, they're going to have to take their mask off. And I think another real concern that has been brought up by some pediatricians that I've heard, and that is flu season coming up, and how is that going to work within schools, And so there's just all these different issues that teachers are responsible for, and have to really monitor their classrooms and the school. And it's very different from being, say, a flight attendant, where you're the people you're responsible for or helping are both all seated in one place, and there are difficulties with that too, of course. Being a grocery store worker, there's certainly safety protocols that you have to follow that are special to your job, and checking people out is dangerous. So I'm not trying to say that there aren't concerns in other areas, but I think the responsibility of children is a very serious concern for teachers, right. And I'm just not sure how it's going to work. I hope it works well, and I think that many teachers are trying so hard to make it work well. But I'm still thinking that the online is better at this point in time.
Yeah, but again, we're in this weird moment because I'm not a proponent of online education.
No.
I think it's far far below the standards that we need. But in this moment, I think it's what we've got. But the thing is we've been talking about all of these concerns and all this fear and all this stuff, and we haven't talked about education. I mean, these kids, where are they going to get the kind of education that they need so that they don't lose a year? Because look, I mean, you're going to put them into a stressful situation, and I don't know if a lot of them are going to grasp the gravity of the moment. And it's just one of those things where do we end up having like an entire year or 2 years almost of lost education for these kids?
Well, that is worrisome, and like you, I'm not a big proponent of online learning, and it's even a little worrisome because I'm in the camp that has been worried quite a bit about technology replacing teachers and the any place, anytime learning, which has been a discussion for quite a long time. There's been a lot of concern about kids being online and doing too much screen. And now teachers are relying on it, and there's a lot of fear, I think, beneath the surface that this might be the end of public schools. I mean, it doesn't seem likely, since I think it's been sort of an experiment where we've learned that parents really need and want their public schools. But there still is that concern about online, and it hasn't certainly turned out to be what I think some thought it would be, that it would solve problems and be a good method of learning, even though teachers are trying really hard with it.
Right.
But, I do think that a year, it is worrisome. And, I taught special ed, so I'm especially concerned with a lot of the kids who are on the autistic spectrum and who have been making such progress. And, it's very difficult. There are also a lot of times the kids that have some of the health issues, so they're more vulnerable to having to getting COVID. So it's really a difficult, and they don't do very well on screens. Parents have voiced real concern about that, and so I don't think there really are any easy answers. I'd try to get, I think, more teachers in place to lower class sizes for online, and make phone calls home or stand outside a window. I know that a lot of people don't like that idea, but just somehow touch base with kids everybody's doing pods, and I don't know what I think about pods. And some people are afraid it's going to replace schools. I don't think they're particularly safe. I think you're still going to have kids together. You're going to have to really trust whether, the other kids haven't been around someone with COVID.
Yeah, what are pods?
And also, who's going to teach the pod? You have that question. Mostly I'm especially worried for the kids that, have poor home environments who aren't even able to connect with their teachers.
Yeah,
so,
I mean that's a huge concern. What are you said pods? What are pods?
Oh, pods. Well, that's kind of an in thing lately, where parents are kind of organizing small groups of children to learn, and in some places they're actually trying to hire teachers to come in. They'll have a very small environment of children.
Okay, so it's basically what the homeschoolers have been doing for.
That's right. It's kind of like homeschooling, and there are real concerns that there'll certainly be inequality, that there'll be wealthy parents that will be able to do this much better than parents who don't have the resources or who need to work or who aren't able to set these things up. So that's been, one idea that's been out there, and I think some people are doing that. And I like some of the kind of homespun ideas, like just ensuring that kids have books to read. I read somewhere where a school was finding out what children like to read, and they were pulling together books, packets of books to get to kids. And I think schools shouldn't forget about the librarians and
No, I'm right there with you, because one of my big concerns, and you hit on it a second ago, is both of my kids who are doing the online stuff, it's all on the screen. And my wife and I are, you want to hold a book in your hand kind of thing. Although my wife does the Kindle a lot too. But my concern is everything's going to be little videos and little game stuff, and they're not going to do enough reading.
Right. I don't see why kids can't get textbooks and books into their hands. I think we need to remember that books. We used to rely on them all the time, and children can learn. I think of a time when I was a kid and we took a vacation. I don't know why we did it when school was in session, but we did, and my teacher gave me my math textbook and my reading textbook, and I was able to do my work, and I really felt like a big kid being able to do my own thing, and my mom and dad would help me a little bit, but I tried to do it on my own, and I was able to kind of work it out and learn problems in math, and I was always a reader, so I think reading is a good thing, that kids should still be reading books as much as possible. And I think a lot of parents, I see parents who are have kids who are going into kindergarten or first grade, and they're very worried and anxious about getting their kids to read because they feel like they're not going to pick it up. But I think if you just continue exposing them to good picture books and
sit and read to them.
Exactly, and don't try to do a lot of worksheets, but you can also get a lot of these little books, these little booklets in places like Staples. You can probably order them online, and they have like little exercises that you can do on your sounds, on your phonic sounds. I'm also worried that, I see some of these commercial programs that are just really trying to sell themselves. Hooked on Phonics is back, I noticed, a while back. The Hooked on Phonics, they were in so much trouble back in the 90s for false advertising.
Yep.
And, so I worry that parents are going to get snookered into purchasing some of these commercial programs, thinking that they're going to make their kids read overnight. But I think the best thing you can really do is just get your kids reading and involved in reading and finding books about the subjects they're interested in and letting them read as much as possible, finding programs that they might enjoy. I'm not sure anymore about some of the programs they have on television, but they used to have such wonderful Reading Rainbow and Bill Nye the Science Guy, and if they can find those programs, they were really excellent in the way of teaching kids new information. They had another program I recall called it was called Wishbone, and it really taught a lot about just different stories and very. Now it seems like a lot of the programs on PBS are computer generated, and they don't seem quite as good as Miss Frizzle and the Magic School, but some of those really excellent programs that they used to have. If parents can get a hold of those programs, I think they might be helpful. But
everything's back to the computer.
Yeah.
Everything's on the computer. But the thing is just put a book in their hands, read to them. They'll pick it up. It's not that hard. We've been doing it for a while. It just seems like common sense to me. But you've written some great articles. I hope folks will take a look at them. Stop the COVID-19 career comparison guilting. No more teacher shaming. And also there's an article on kindergartners reading. You can take a look at that at nancybailey.com, nancybailey.com. We'll get links out on how you can take a look at that. Nancy, always wonderful talking to you. I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. You take care now.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day oil workers walked off the job. The strike soon spread to 20 states and involved more than 43,000 workers at 22 oil companies. After years of wartime wage freezes, the union's demand was 52 for 40, 52 hours pay for 40 hours work. Workers demanded a 30% pay increase, shift differentials, and an eventual return to the 36-hour work week. The strike began in Michigan at the Saccone Vacuum Refinery in Trenton. From there, it spread to Gulf, Sinclair, and Shell. By October 4th, President Truman signed Executive Order 9639, allowing the Secretary of the Navy to seize petroleum operations. The Oil Workers International Union CIO immediately called off the strike and ordered its members back to work. A month later, the Navy had still not relinquished control of operations. The Union considered Truman's seizure a betrayal. There was no mechanism put in place to settle the dispute or consider workers' demands. By January 1946, the oil panel created by the Secretary of Labor finally awarded oil workers an 18% wage increase. Though disappointed, the Union considered it a victory. They asserted the strike action was significant on a number of levels. The first nationwide industry strike had just forced the oil companies to meet with the union for the very first time. The OWI believed the groundwork for industry-wide bargaining had been finally established. It had been the first post-war strike and had forced the government to begin moving away from wartime wage controls. Of the post-war strikes, it won the largest pay increase. And importantly, it broke the power of Standard Oil to dictate wages to the industry through its dealings with its independent union.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we're now finding out, thanks to the Washington Post, what we already knew. And I think I said this back when, you remember when at Lafayette Square you had, the Bible moment where the police came in and the military police came in and cleared out the protesters so Trump could do that walk that he did. The picture's incredible. I mean, and when we're fully a fascist country and we're fully with the dictator, he's our guy, it will be that moment of pride of him walking down the line of the military-looking police with their shields. It was really quite an authoritative, kind of photos, man. He's something. We now find out that federal officials began stockpiling ammunition, and even asked if they could get the sound cannons and the goodbye gun. And I said this from the beginning. You know what we did in Iraq with crowd control, because we used all these toys over there. I was saying even back then, all of this stuff that they're experimenting with on crowd control would eventually end up here. And I said it was going to end up being used as something to control labor. When there finally are mass strikes and people have finally said, hey, we've been getting screwed enough. When people finally say we've had enough and start taking to the streets to fight back against inequality, then they're going to break out these, the ADS, the active denial system. And what this active denial system is it's supposed to, it uses, I guess, millimeter wave technology, whatever that is. And I'm sure some of my science listeners will go, oh, I know what that is. You know that it basically heats your body up. You think you're on fire. It basically microwaves you. And they have also got one, I guess, that it hits you with some kind of wave that makes you like almost vomit on impact. And you go, who in their right mind would think of something like that? I mean, there's all this stuff, and these sound cannons, these obnoxious sound cannons that they use. They wanted to use that stuff on American citizens. The emails have been outed. It's right there. And are you surprised by it? And for me, the answer is no. And what's interesting is, I have these conversations with some of my labor friends, because understand the labor movement in this country was our history, and we play labor history in 2 every day here on the program. The history of organizing and getting, fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, building a prosperous working class was bloody, was brutal, and was violent. And, with the toys that they've got now, they're going to make sure that never happens again. And and I tell my labor friends this, I go, you learn your labor history. What it took to get what you've got was people in the streets. What it took to get where we are today is people who were willing to stand up and say no more. Now imagine if the people at the time had the kind of toys that they've got today. Things that will make you feel like you are literally on fire. Sound cannons that could explode your eardrums. Because, well, we're not going to shoot you. We're just going to make you feel like you're on fire. And there are some who go, well, that's how you control the crowds. They're just angry protesters. Yeah, that's why they're protesting. They're angry. And it is, I know for all you constitutional scholars out there, it is their absolute constitutional right to seek redress of their government, to have their grievances heard by their government, and to have that government say, no, don't think so. We're going to stockpile. No, look, you may remember the all the stories that were running around on Twitter and on Facebook of, the protesters, they were putting boxes of rocks by the garbage cans. They were putting rocks all over the place. Our military was stockpiling munitions against rocks. Let that sink in for a second. But, not surprising. Not surprising at all. It is who Trump is. And like I've been saying, all of the horrible stuff we've been saying for the last 3.5 years, all of the things that have been in the news that Trump has done and has reportedly wanted to do is 110% accurate. And I'll tell you, to me, it's quite remarkable that our news media is actually that functional. Kudos to them. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Bob Ney is going to be here to share some thoughts on some other crazy stories of the day. You're not going to want to miss that. Stick around. We're right back.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
hurricanes often come with more water than wind. This one has both.
Hurricane Sally approaches the U.S. Gulf Coast with more hurricanes on the way.
This is a climate damn emergency. This is real.
Deadly West Coast wildfires break more new records. Plus,
if you give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze?
Former Vice President Joe Biden blasts climate denier Trump and urges swift action.
All of those blasts and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually.
Okay, science doesn't know, but Donald Trump does. Yep, global warming will just go away, just like COVID did. Am I right, 200,000 dead Americans? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, before we get to the absolutely appalling, idiotic, disgusting latest thing the President of the United States said, we got another hurricane coming in, don't we?
Oh, hell yes, we do. We've got compounding climate disasters. Climate change intensified mega fires burning out west, a mega drought across the southwest, and Hurricane Sally bringing flooding to the Mississippi Delta, all during a pandemic straining emergency services everywhere.
Other than that, things are going great.
Oh, and on Monday, an enormous chunk of Greenland's ice cap broke off in the Arctic, a development that scientists say is evidence of rapid climate change.
Things are going very, very well.
So first up, the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season is truly historic, fueled by man-made climate change warming the oceans. There are now 5 storms spinning in the Atlantic, and that's happened only once before on record since 1850. As we go to air, Hurricane Sally is lumbering toward landfall on the Gulf Coast after rapidly intensifying to a Category 2. The National Hurricane Center warns Sally will bring life-threatening storm surge and flash floods because of its slow forward progress and intense rainfall.
I would just like to remind everyone that parts of Louisiana are still suffering from Hurricane Laura. Parts of the state are still without electricity and under boil water orders.
Yep.
And here we are, another one coming ashore.
Sally is the earliest S-named storm ever recorded, and so are tropical storms Teddy and Vicky now brewing in the Atlantic. That puts us 3 weeks ahead of the previous record hurricane season in 2005.
Oh, but you know, science doesn't know what it's talking about.
NOAA on Monday announced that this summer in the Northern Hemisphere was the hottest summer in history since record-keeping began in the 1850s, and that August 2020 was the second hottest August globally. Meanwhile, wildfires continue to engulf parts of the West. In California, Oregon, and Washington, wildfires have now burned more than 5 million acres so far this year, a record. At least 35 people have been killed, tens of thousands evacuated, thousands of homes and even entire communities have been destroyed, and officials warn of long-term contamination of drinking water systems and soil from the fires. The August Complex fire in Northern California is now the largest in state history. It has burned more than 1,000 square miles and destroyed half of the Mendocino National Forest. Idaho has now become the latest western state to face evacuations due to wildfire. Climate and forest scientists say man-made global warming is directly responsible for intensifying the fires by dramatically deepening heat waves and drought, plus a century of U.S. Forest Service fire suppression policy. But on a visit to California on Monday to tour the devastation, President Trump blamed the states for the fires, again peddling absurd, repetitive falsehoods that they need to rake their forest floors. When California State Natural Resources Secretary Wade Crowfoot urged Trump to recognize climate science and work with states on solving the crisis, Trump denied it exists.
If we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay. It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually.
He is an idiot, and a deadly one at that.
In stark contrast, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden rebuked Trump for denying basic science on both the coronavirus and climate change during a speech on Monday in Delaware. Calling Trump a climate arsonist, Biden warned that extreme weather impacts now threaten every state. The costs and the damages will get worse, but it can be solved with urgent action.
We can and we will solve the climate crisis. It'll be the greatest spur to job creation and economic competitiveness in the 21st century, not to mention the positive benefits to our health and our environment.
Biden has proposed investing $2 trillion in upgrading the nation's infrastructure for climate resilience and to transition the nation to 100% clean energy.
It can't happen soon enough. Of course, he's got to win first. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Gotta tell you, I can't wait for Saturday Night Live to come back. Jim Carrey will be playing Joe Biden. So they're evidently coming back the couple of days after the first debate. First debate is going to be on September 29th. Obviously, Saturday Night Live will be on October 3rd. So you got to know that they're going to be going after that first debate. You're going to have Jim Carrey on one side and Alec Baldwin playing Donald Trump on the other. Should be quite amusing. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top news of the day, our good friend, former Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah,
That's a definite tune in.
I am looking forward to that. Put a little levity to this insanity.
Sure, it's going to be great.
Let's start off with the first thing that made me just cringe today. Evidently, Trump was on a call with American Jewish leaders, and he finished off with we appreciate you, we really appreciate you, and we love your country also.
Oh, did he say that?
Yeah.
Okay. But these were Jewish leaders in America.
Yes, they were American Jewish leaders. We love your country. Yeah, I love our country too. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I have a friend of mine who is he was at the White House for the signing, and he's very active in the Jewish community. I've got to message him tomorrow and get his reaction.
And speaking of the big signing, thoughts? Let's start with that.
Sure. I think if you beyond the signing, let's go to a statement, and it was made by Anwar Garash, who is the United Arab Emirates Foreign Affairs Minister, right? And he said that beyond saying the word Palestinians in the preamble, he wanted language in there about West Bank annexation, etc. And Israel had refused to do that. So the preamble to it had mentioned the word Palestinians, but that was sort of the United Arab Emirates way of saying, don't worry about it. And this is what they've actually kind of said, paraphrasing here. Don't worry about it. We're going to be able to put a lot of pressure on Israel and a lot of pressure on the Palestinians, and we'll be able to make this thing happen as time goes on. Well, first of all, United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are going to establish embassies, and they're going to move diplomats in there, and they got business deals. I already know of a person on a council right now between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, and they're on with people from Israel, and they're all putting together business deals. And this is all going to happen like pretty instant. Right. And then, of course, the F-35 deal from us to the United Arab Emirates. Having said all of that, nobody's going to tell me, or anybody that has studied these things, and Joe Biden knows foreign affairs better than anybody, in the country. When you look at this, we all know what's going to happen, and that is, there's no way that the United Arab Emirates are going to say, okay, we're going to shut everything down unless you do, the following, because you've done nothing. Right. If nothing occurs, they're not going to do it. So, having said that, is this better than not doing something? Sure, but again, as we who have followed this for years and years and years know, this is not a Palestinian-Israeli peace accord, and I frankly don't think it's going to lead to a Palestinian-Israeli peace accord. It's more of a I'm not even going to say religious or cultural. It's more of a business deal.
Yep. No, I said it wasn't a peace deal. It was an arms deal.
No, it's a business deal.
And it's all about the money. And you're right.
Sure.
I mean, the United Arab Emirates may put a little pressure on it, but ultimately, I would argue it's to get them better leverage in the business deal and more of the piece of the pie.
Right. And then if you look at what Kushner followed this up with, this is really interesting, that he expects more countries to normalize with Israel before the Palestinian deal. Well, before what deal? There is no current deal, first of all. Second of all, the president mentioned the word Saudi Arabia. So I think they're hoping to get the Saudis before the election, not to say they're going to reestablish, but they're in a thinking mode. I mean, that's what he'll want, and then that'll give this story a little bit more life because it's the great kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Mohammed bin Salman and Jared Kushner are best friends. Kushner called him 86 times 1 month. You know, I mean, you can plug in the pieces to the rest. That's business, by the way, too.
Sure. No, all of this is business.
Between
all
Kushner and MBS.
Right. It's all part of the kleptocracy.
Sure. Absolutely.
There's no question about that. And look, we knew this on day one. This is no surprise to me.
Right. Right. We talked about that on the day this was announced. We talked about it on your show.
Yeah, and again, I'm not surprised by it. What I am kind of surprised at is there's some reporting right now going on that there may have been some people who had tested positive for COVID around them. So we may have spread it a little bit further around the world.
Oh, really? Well, Netanyahu flew. I think Israel was in a 3-week lockdown when he left.
Yeah, they started on Friday.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And well, maybe he brought it here.
You never know.
Just absolutely crazy. But I look at that and I'm going, is this? Immediately I got emails from conservative groups saying, this is time for Donald Trump to get the Nobel Peace Prize, and Jim Jordan last week said that this should lead to the Nobel Peace Prize. Should Donald get or Kush get the Peace Prize for this?
No, that shouldn't happen because again, if they were sitting there and it was Palestinians, yes, absolutely. If Barakat, the head of the Palestinians, was sitting there, absolutely, Nobel Peace Prize. If he could have delivered Kim Jong-un and he settled down permanently, then yeah, I think in all fairness, Nobel Peace Prize. But this is not a Nobel Peace Prize moment, period. This is not, I love, CNN gave Trump credit today. And I just love how they're feeding into this signing, because the Prime Minister was there of Israel and the UAE and Bahrain. And again, is this better than something not happening between the Arab world and Israel? Sure, it's better than nothing happening. However, it is not a Palestinian deal. It has nothing to do with the Palestinians, and it won't have anything to do with the Palestinians. So therefore, it is not a peace accord. It's a, kind of nice business deal.
Yeah, for my QAnon crazy folks, this is the wealthy figuring out how to slice up the world a little bit more so that they can profit from it just a little bit more.
Oh, people are going to make a lot of money off this.
Yep,
a lot.
And Kush and company are in on it.
Consultants, lobbyists, people running businesses, creation of business between the countries. There'll be a lot of it. Absolutely. Well, Kushner has established himself with Israel and Saudi Arabia, period. Because, look, if they exit the White House, what do you think is going to happen in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with Kushner? He's going to do well.
Yeah, he's going to do well.
Real good.
Let me ask you this. Did I miss something? Did we put new sanctions on Iran that we're going to start enforcing next week?
Well, we did more than that. We actually became the United Nations last night.
Okay.
I mean, it's great. We are now the UN. This actually was a story that has been uncovered through the former head of the National Iranian American Council, Dr. Parsi, and I read it on his site, and I looked into it, and sure enough, August 21st, this story was out there, and basically was completely ignored. The bottom line is that our Secretary of State, Pompeo, said that the United States is prepared to enforce sweeping, now this is the quote, United Nations sanctions on Iran. Now, here's the problem. The United Nations voted that down to do sanctions. There are no United Nations sanctions, but he said they are prepared to vote and move forward, with United Nations sanctions on Iran and prepared to start seizing ships.
So we're going to start capturing ships at sea. Isn't that kind of an act of war?
Well, yes. What do you do with them? You capture a ship at sea on behalf of the United Nations when there are no United Nations sanctions. We have sanctions, but those sanctions give us no right to go into the Persian Gulf and grab an Iranian ship. Now, if it was United Nations sanctions, yeah, we can stretch that one. But that's not what's going on. They were downed. We lost at the Security Council, period. And our allies, all of them, turned on us, and because they don't want any part of this. So I just found it amazing. Now, what's going through my mind? Does one want to bet maybe in the next X amount of days that some ship is seized and we get, quote, tough on the Iranians and look at us, and if Joe Biden was president, they'd be shipping their ships all over the world? You can see the scenario.
Yeah, this seems very political.
But that trick could lead to a war.
But here's the weird thing, in talking with some of the Trump cultists, I think they'd be okay with it.
Well, some of them may be. I can guarantee you some of them won't be. But I also promise, that if we get into beginnings of a war with Iran before this election, I promise you for sure, I would put my money that Joe Biden will be president of the United States no matter what.
Okay.
I would put my money on it.
Because, it's been a while since I talked with Larry Korb, who's the military expert over at the Center for American Progress. And the line that I remember from him was, if you think Iraq was fun, just wait till you get into Iran. Because they actually have guns that fire and planes that fly.
Well, as you know, I used to live in Iran in 1978. I lived there. And I can tell you that they have a developed military because we created it. They have a developed system because we created it, for them. Our CIA and, the Shah of Iran, et cetera. And then in came an unstable government, the Ayatollah's government, but they still have weaponry and they have a fierce fighting force. And it would be unlike any war we've ever seen. But remember, Bolton got missiles flying towards Iran. And remember what happened? Trump turned them around. He stopped it. Even Trump was afraid. So it's very interesting to see if Pompeo does this as one of those kind of neat tricks that, hey, we're getting tough on Iran and it backfires and something starts. I promise you they will get something they don't want right before the election, and it won't be a wartime president. People will freak over it.
I hope you're right. I know I will, but I hope that this could possibly be that moment that shakes even the cultists awake.
Yes. A lot of people will leave because we cannot sustain another war.
Yeah.
It's virtually impossible. We've got so much going on here with COVID and social issues. We cannot sustain a war.
No, you're right. I wanted to get your thoughts on this email that NPR has uncovered from evidently some of our military police with jurisdiction there in D.C. Asking for these heat ray guns, the active denial system weaponry to use on protesters here. In fact, they're saying they wanted to use sound cannons and this ADS system. I've been saying for a while, they developed these toys in Iraq. They used it for crowd control there, and eventually they were going to come back here, and now we see this.
Right. The House Committee on Natural Resources, got this from NPR, and of course, they were talking about things that have been developed to disperse crowds 20 years ago. Actually, they developed them, plus some new weaponry. But they wanted, and by the way, the person has sought whistleblower protection that brought this out, about this.
Right.
But they want this capability of it's called ADS. They can direct a beam towards a group. It provides a sensation of intense heat on the surface of the skin. It causes them to immediately be able to repel that particular individual. It's like a heat ray gun, I guess you'd call it. And if you look at small towns and states, but really even small towns, and I saw this developing, Rick, when I was leaving Congress in the 2005-6 era. We had more and more places asking, "Can you get us this extra military equipment that's not being used? Can you get us this? Can you get us that?" We had requests all the time, and I think we got into this whole militarization of the police, which has nothing to do with the issue of defunding the police. Is one issue in itself, and there's a lot of issues. Protecting cities, on the other hand, is the other side of that, and I understand that. But this is a whole different ballgame. It's equipment that is potentially and has been used in war.
Right.
And if you look at it, this is it's mounted on a truck. They point it at people, and they do, heat rays. So I just can't believe that this will be used on the streets.
Yeah, no, I was curious because, when you look at this, and to highlight your point, I live in a very small community. They've got a freaking tank. What's a tiny police department like where I live doing with a freaking tank?
Right, exactly. Right, and it's been going on for years. It's been building up for years. And again, this is not one of these, we're going to defund the police by taking this away. That's not the issue. That's a whole separate issue. This is equipment that probably will not be used and probably should not be used.
Shouldn't be used. What it is for me is it's a different mindset of what policing is. Instead of keeping law and order and being the friendly cop on the beat, we're talking about the iron fist of the law, and it's the difference I think between Trump and Biden. And I think this is one of those things that the Trump cultists, they want that crackdown. They want to see those protesters hit with the goodbye gun. They want to see mass pain and rubber bullets and people being shot. And also, I don't know if you saw the Billy Barr bit. But he's telling, I guess, federal prosecutors that he wants to aggressively go after those demonstrators, with, I guess, like sedition laws.
Oh, I didn't see that.
We're gonna arrest people for protesting under the guise of they're trying to overthrow the government.
Yeah, because they have to be very, very careful on that, and then you do turn into an Iran, or a Saudi Arabia, where Iran just executed a wrestler for sedition. So there's a difference between somebody who does violence at an event of some type, and they can be arrested. Sure, they're doing violence, they're burning something. Arrest them, fine.
Yep.
But to charge with sedition, that really pushes the envelope off the table, because that means it can go further. Verbal acts of sedition, and then you're into something you don't want to be in, because it's not a democracy anymore.
Then you go down in history right next to John Adams.
Right, exactly.
Finally, the big debate's coming up. There's talk that maybe this is more important for Trump than it is for Biden. Thoughts?
Oh yes, I think it's important for Biden in the sense that he needs to not make large mistakes. Now, friends of mine that are active in the Biden campaign say to me, "Well, Bob, Trump." I said, "That doesn't matter. We are numb to the Trump side of it.
Yep.
The media will do a frenzy on Biden more than Trump, because they can get a response from Trump, right? So that's one thing. But I think for Trump's purposes, yes, this debate is more important than for Biden. All Biden has to do is don't do something horrible.
No massive gaffes.
Yeah, right. No massive ones. And if he does that, then he, may not do that well, but he'll do okay. Trump has to knock it out of the park.
Yeah. What do you say to the Joe Rogan 4-hour debate? Hearkening back to the Lincoln Douglas debates.
Wow. I don't.
Would you watch it? I mean, you're probably the most politically. The most political spectator that I know, because you do what you do and you do it very well. Would you sit and watch that for 4 hours?
I probably would watch it for the first hour to see if one of them grabbed the other's lapel. I would probably do that. Now, I might give it 2 hours if it got a bit testy, but after that, I don't know. I'm going to turn on Netflix or something. No, I can't do 4 hours. No, and I've sat through a lot in my lifetime.
All right, so you couldn't do the bomb. See, I would. I think someone would fall asleep. I think the winner would stay awake, and someone would fall asleep at the end.
Right, exactly.
There you go, Bob. As always, great stuff. I appreciate the time, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2004. That was not a good day for hockey fans. The National Hockey League owners locked out the players. The owners and the players' union could not come to an agreement on issues including pay, free agency rules, and drug testing. League owners also wanted to implement a salary cap. The Players Association objected. The first game of the season was supposed to take place on October 13th. But across the country, the arenas stood silent. As the impasse dragged on, in February, the league announced the season was canceled. The Associated Press reported, quote, "A hockey season on the brink is now a season gone bust." The NHL canceled what was left of its decimated schedule Wednesday after a round of last gasp negotiations failed to resolve differences over a salary cap, the flashpoint issue that led to a lockout. The article continued, quote, "No Stanley Cup champion will be crowned. The first time that's happened since 1919, when the 2-year-old league called off the finals because of a flu epidemic. It was the first time that a North American professional sports league lost a full season to a labor dispute. Some of the players found work in the European leagues at greatly reduced pay. It's estimated that the league lost $2 billion in the lockout and that players lost $1 billion in salaries. The impact of the lockout rippled throughout restaurants and other businesses that relied on the hockey crowds, causing layoffs for waitstaff. Finally, in July, an agreement was reached. The players gave in to the owner's demand for a salary cap. In 2012, another lockout by management cost NHL players another half of the season. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So crazy's just not here in the U.S. Evidently, 29 police officers in Germany have been suspended for sharing pictures of Adolf Hitler and doctored depictions of refugees in the gas chambers with mobile phones. You just go, sick, disgusting, yes. But this rise of this right-wing nonsense, this craziness is just, it's getting out of hand. And in fact, in Miami, the Miami Herald has had to apologize for one of its publications, one of its one of the newspapers that it owns. It evidently ran an insert into one of these that compared the Black Lives Matter folks to Nazis, which is bizarre. But they go on to at one point ask, what kind of people are these Jews? And why are the Jews always talking about the Holocaust? Probably because, the latest study comes out. It said, what was it? 2/3 of kids don't realize that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Probably that's why, so that maybe we never forget and never allow the rise of another fascist dictator like Hitler. Maybe someone might want to look at the guy we've got now. Kind of a thought. Also, we'll find out that a number of these right-wing anarchist groups, a number of these militia groups, I had heard of these Boogaloo Boys. Didn't realize they were as popular as they're libertarian anarchists. With I guess responsible for killing a cop not too long ago. But the rise of these right-wing crazy groups is really alarming. And for all of the talk of the Caputos out there saying that the liberals are arming and they're ready to take over overthrow the country and kill people, it's these right-wing groups that are causing all these problems. And I had a conversation the other day with a guy who said, well, Antifa went and shot that cop in L.A. And I'm going, I don't know who shot the cop in L.A. I hope they find them. I hope they prosecute them. I hope they deal with them. Because that's in no way, shape, or form condone or even understand why you would do that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of these crazy militia-type groups, or one of these anarchist groups, one of these extreme libertarian groups. Wouldn't be surprised at all. And that we end up jumping to the kind of things that they spoon feed us. And this guy was, quite adamant. It's Antifa that's doing this. I'm going, how do you know it was Antifa? Did they have a uniform? Did they leave a business card? Unlike the guy the Boogaloo boy who shot the policeman, who evidently wrote, stuff on the car. We most certainly live in very bizarre times. And to finish up today, Kanye West. I think that's enough. I think all I have to say is Kanye West. And there's something insane about to happen. Evidently, he has requested that his staffers that are working on his presidential campaign, quote, refrain from fornicating outside of marriage. This is the guy. Go back, the rap stuff, never. Do as I say, not as I do. But no, the staffers cannot do that outside of marriage. Thanks for that, Kanye. Get some help. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.